Savvy Business Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with our host, Christina Nichman.
Our guest today is Rocky Romanella, founder of 360 Management Services, LLC. Utilizing over 40 years of experience, Rocky embarked on writing Tightening the Lug Nuts, the principles of balanced leadership, which explore the ways a true leader can add value as a trusted advisor, mentor, and visionary. Find out more and get your very own copy of Tighten the Lug Nuts at 60 managementservices.com. Hi, Rocky. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. It's such a great honor to have you here today.
Well, thank you, and it's my pleasure to be here with you and your audience.
Oh, you betcha. You've written a wonderful book that really touches on how to build good leadership in your business. And there's a lot of business books out there touching on leadership and business books as such, but you wrote yours very interestingly from a perspective of creating a nonfiction character, Joe Scafone, right? Joe Scafone. Yeah, I trouble with the Italian name here, Joe Scafone. But it's interesting. It's Tighten the Lug Nuts, and we really need this because as you grow as a business, leadership grows with you, and you have to be able to not only be a good leader yourself, but bring good leadership to your company so you can continue to explode and grow and bring your great product and services to the marketplace. So share with our audience a little bit about your backstory. What brought you to creating this book?
Well, thank you for asking. So I have over a 40-year business background, and started out right out of high school working for UPS unloading trailers. And it was one of those opportunities to work my way through college. And UPS had a promotion from within policy. And so I took advantage of it. My dad, who has since passed, told me two things when I was starting working there. And he said to me, learn your job, learn some more, and whatever they ask you to do, say yes and thank you. And so that always stuck in my background, in the back of my mind. So as opportunities presented themselves and growth potential was there, whenever UPS said, hey, we got this opportunity for you, it's in Chicago. And we moved, I think it's 9 times across the country with UPS with 4 kids in tow. And so whenever that opportunity came forward, all I could hear is my dad in the background saying, hey, whatever they ask you to do, say yes and thank you. And so I said, yeah, let's do it. And I learned a valuable lesson through that process that I think small business owners and large business owners can really benefit from. And that's this concept of you may not feel ready for that opportunity when it's presented to you, but UPS had faith and trust in me well in advance that I had it in myself. And so UPS had faith and confidence in Rocky Romanella before I had it in myself. And as a leader, many times you have to have faith and confidence in your people until they're ready to believe in themselves. And then when you get that confidence and you're feeling good about yourself, you sort of have that break even moment. And then at some point you're really confident, you're really doing well. And that's when, as a leader, you take a step back and you go from being that support person to maybe that cheerleader. And so for me, I learned that valuable lesson that it's important for leaders to believe in their people until they're ready to believe in themselves. And so I worked my way through UPS after 36 years, got an opportunity to do many interesting things inside of UPS. Some of the non-traditional things, we were going through an acquisition period, and we built UPS Supply Chain Solutions. And I had a chance to be the president general manager for this side of the world for UPS and integrate these over 20 companies. And then we purchased mailboxes, et cetera, and rebranded to the UPS store. And that was a direct report to me. And that's where I got a chance to meet some of the greatest entrepreneurs and really get an understanding of the world of being an entrepreneur. Now, obviously, I worked for a large corporation, but what I learned from individual business, small business owners is that they have the ultimate P&L responsibilities. That, at the end of the day, they hit the cash register, the drawer opens, they pay their people, they pay their vendors, and what's left in that cash register is really what's left for them and their family. And so that's the ultimate of, all in kind of concept. And so I learned a lot from them, and then retired from UPS, got a chance to be the CEO of a telecom company, UniTek. We installed cable TV, direct TV, and built cell towers. We had a private equity sale, and then retired from there. So I guess, Christina, my failure is retiring. So
you didn't fail.
Yeah. You didn't fail. So and now I wrote my book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, and I do keynote speaking and leadership training. So that's a little bit of the backstory of Rocky Romanella.
Well, what I love is that many of the business books are very cut, dry, boring. yours is very witty, humorous, and you took it from using this fictional character, which allows you to get deeper into the story. There's a couple of business books I've seen like this, but not many. And it really helps you kind of step into the shoes of what it's like to be a good leader and actually wear it and say, okay, here's what this guy Joe's doing. How can I incorporate that into my business?
Well, it's funny because years ago, and it's got to be more than 25 years ago, as I was growing in and taking on additional responsibilities and more in larger groups of people were reporting to me or working with me, I never liked that feeling of Christina brought me an idea and I said, well, Christina, maybe you should look at it differently or maybe we can do it differently. I always felt like that maybe was starting to like shut off some communication. So Joe Scafone was created. I would say to you, hey, Christina, that's a great idea, but what do you think Joe Scafone would think? And you would, and you'd look at me and then, as people got to know me or work for me for different times, they would come to meetings and say to me, hey, I already covered this with Joe. Joe thinks this is a really good idea. I would say, okay, that's good. But okay, but look, can I at least listen to it? And then let me know. So Joe Scafone became this person who allowed me to challenge people to maybe not stop at the first right answer or maybe look past that answer or maybe look at it differently without challenging them in a way that made them feel like I didn't think it was a good idea or they weren't prepared or it wasn't, they hadn't maybe, looked at all of the details. And so for me, Joe Scafone allowed me to, in a positive way, to challenge people to be the best they could or be, maybe not stop at that first right answer and look past that first right answer they were presenting for me.
Wow. This is so awesome, Rocky, because I love what your dad said about say yes to everything and thank you. Because so much now when I go into corporate America, I've been asked to be a consultant in AR. So I look at that side of the book, see why things are not getting paid the way they should, what's happening in the cash flow. But, it's not just one side. There's two sides. There's the payroll and there's the sales and all the departments work in congruency together, or you hope, so that you can grow your business. But what I find so interesting is people today are like, well, I don't want to say yes. I just want to do as minimal as possible and get in to get out. And even if they don't say that, that is their actions. And this isn't just support staff. This is even management. So I love what your dad said there about, really putting your all into it, not kind of just putting your toe in the pool, as it were, but really just stepping in and putting yourself in there, because this is a group effort. If you're going to grow anything great, it takes the entire company and everyone coming on board.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. And that's how the concept in the book, we talk a lot about my management concept or management philosophy of balanced leadership. And that really came about as I was growing and as I was learning from others around me, that it always felt like extremes are no good on either side. And it felt like we were either focused on, growing profitability or focused on our people, or we had a problem. So now we're going to become a people company, or, we need to focus on our profitability. And what I realized is that, it's about good balance. It's about when you're making decisions to make sure those three constituents are representing. Are you thinking like a customer? Are you making sure your people feel like valued individuals? Do they know what role they play? Do they think you view them as part of the problem or part of the solution? And then in all the decisions you make, are you acting like an owner? If this was your candy store, if you owned this business 100%, would you do those things, or would you make this decision? And so that whole concept of thinking like a customer, feeling like a valued individual, and acting like an owner became part of the decision-making process and part of the conversations I would have. So when someone would bring me an idea, and you know what that's like, Christina, someone comes up with a new product. Well, there's a great PowerPoint presentation telling you why it's a great product, why the customer wants it, what are the attributes of the product. And of course, the CFO sitting there, he or she's banging out a calculator, right? And they're trying, this is a great profit. It's going to be a profitable product. It's a good product. But I would always say then, well, we've got the customer represented. That's a good thing. We've got, the profitability that's represented. But how about our people? Do they understand, why it's an important product for us? They understand how it's positioned. If there's a disconnect, what role do they play? And so people would kind of look at you and say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So I always wanted to make sure that all three constituents were represented. And sometimes it was a people profit, were well represented, but the customer wasn't. So it always allowed me to ask key questions. And I tried to have my people think through that whole concept of, are our customers, people, and stakeholders, are they all represented in our decision-making process?
Yeah, and I love this three-prong approach to leadership because it's not just the customers you have to think about, and it's not just you thinking about, am I looking at this as this, like this is my personal business, but it's also the people that make things happen, your support staff, everyone there who is supporting the different functions that make everything happen, because no one person can make anything great. It takes a whole bunch of people with valued skills and talents to actually build something and make it launch and be great.
Oh, that's a great point. And look, think about it from this perspective. Nothing's more sacred to a company, no matter what size they are, than their brand. And they spend a tremendous amount of time and effort to promote their brand, to identify what their brand promise is, what does their brand represent. And so the brand is sacred to a company, regardless of the size. Well, who executes the brand on your behalf? It's your people. So the brand execution comes down to that person who interacts with your customers. It's the person on the phone who calls. You're talking about AR. Mm-hmm. It's how I pick up the phone and how I dial and how I talk to that customer or that person on the other end of the phone about this AR situation. Well, that's representing the brand. And so no one executes your brand or represents your brand better than your people, yet in many cases, they're not represented in the decision-making process, but they're going to execute your brand. They're going to be your brand representative.
Mm-hmm. And you made a good point. Do they even understand the brand? I've worked at some companies where there was a stock company I worked with where no one had a good handle what they did for people in their stock. I would ask them, so how are they helping people with their stock? They're like, I don't know. I'm like, right. Well, how can you help any of the clients when they call to ask about, how is my stock performing or what are you all doing for me? And if the support staff can't answer that, then you have some problems.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think you're absolutely right. And you've articulated in a way that I think the small business owner, because think about it, when you're a small business owner and you're starting your business and it may be you interacting with all the customers, right? And so that's, I always say, and I have an opportunity to work with a lot of small business owners and I love it. But it's funny with small business owners, their strengths, their weakness. So their strength is nobody knows their business better than they do. No one cares about their business more than they do, and no one is more excited about their business than they are. What's their weakness? Nobody knows their business better than they do. No one is more excited about their business than they are. So the minute they have to add a second or third person, because the good news is we have growth. Well, the bad news is we have growth because I have to be able to now find a way to instill that pride, to instill that feeling that I have about my business in them, because when I'm not there, they're going to represent my brand. They're going to represent my business. So how do I instill in them this understanding of the business, this excitement for the business, and this pride in the business that I have as a small business owner? And that's really the key. And then, of course, as you get to be a world-class organization, as you get to be the companies the size of AT&T and GE and UPS, or pick one of the largest corporations in the world, it's not the CEO that makes the difference. It's that person who interacts with the customer at the frontline level. Can you drive down to them the value prop? Can you drive down to them the pride in executing the brand promise on behalf of the organization to that individual who's interacting with the customer? That's really the trick. That's really the key to a long-term sustainable company.
Yeah, absolutely, Rocky. And you mentioned something else before, which I think would bring that forth, and that is really believing in your staff before maybe they even believe in themselves, and not kind of strong-holding them, like holding their hand so much that they're not able to grow and prosper. One of my best bosses, and I've talked about it on the show before, way back when, was a guy that truly believed in every staff member and pushed them. Now, you didn't get to sit there and just rest on your laurels. He always pushed you to do more, be more. And I mean, I remember the first day he had me on staff, he gave me all this legal documents I know nothing about and says, go to it. But he believed you could do it. And people just rose and their performance exploded. I mean, so did the business. And then when you had a problem, here's the other thing, Rocky. He would say, okay, there's a problem. You'd walk into his office and say, okay, what's plan A, B, C? Put it on the table. He wanted you to actually be proactive and how you're going to solve this problem and put all of the plan A, B, C, because no, plan A always doesn't work. And then you might have to go to B or C, but he always wanted you to be proactive and to live your full potential.
Oh, I think you were very fortunate to work for an individual like that. And I think that's so important, right? Because, that's that whole concept of only accepting a person's best. You want to recognize each employee's value, each person's value inside your organization. And then I think what he did is he conveyed to you high expectations, which, challenge you to be the best you could be, and not stop at that first right answer, as we spoke about before. And then generally leaders like that, they don't really ever talk about past problems, right? They, look, we've identified them, we've talked about them, we know what happened. Let's move forward. How many times do you work for somebody that keeps going back? Now remember, it's like, okay, I got it. Right? Right? I mean, it's like, all right, I got it already. Like, all right, can we move forward? So I think that's so important. And I used to say to people all the time that, I don't need news reporters. I need news makers. There's a lot of people that can report the news to me, but I need a news maker, not a news reporter. Because you know what that's like. Everybody wants to walk in with the latest news. Okay, that's great, but do you have an answer? So let's go make some news. Why don't you come in with some news? Why don't you make some news for us and really make a difference? And so that we can, really we kind of move forward and you can feel good about yourself as well.
Yeah, it's not basically coming in, here's all the problems and what we didn't do about them and what we don't know what to do about them. Here's all the problems and here's what we did to fix them.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm hoping people listening in, no matter what phase of business you're at, will begin to think of how could I add these leadership qualities into my business and also to the people who work for me, managers, support staffs, even supervisors, and how you can help everyone, no matter what, even if you're the receptionist, be their own best leader. Because it's not just the managements and supervisors or directors. You want everyone to be their own leader.
Well, I agree with you. And I get often asked the question, who were you writing the book for? So for me, it's a leadership book, but I believe we're all leaders at one time or another in different phases at different times. So for example, as parents, as adults, as PT members of the PTA, a soccer coach, I think sometimes people get caught up in leadership has to have a title. You're a manager, supervisor. No, we're all leaders. And a quick example to me would be, because I think leadership's about legacy. Do you leave things a little better than you found them? Are people better because of their time with you? Are your customers better because of their interaction with you? So leadership is about making a difference and making things a little bit better. And so the example I cite all the time is if you and I were in a room together and I, I was doing a keynote speech and I'd say, hey, how many people in this room know who their state senator is or state representative or the head of their board of education? And most people in the room couldn't answer that question. But if I asked the question, Christina, who's the teacher that made a difference in your life? Everybody stops, tilt their heads. Oh, Miss So-and-so, fifth grade, or Mr. So-and-so in third grade. Everybody has that teacher who's made a difference in their life. And so by that extension, teachers are great leaders because they make a difference. They make a difference in people's lives. So I agree with you. I think it's important, sometimes, maybe you're not that formal leader, but we're all leaders. We all take on that responsibility and we all can make a difference, and not only in our own lives, but in the lives of the people we impact and the lives of the people that we interact with.
Great boss I told you about earlier, that guy made us all leaders. I mean, he would assign to us whatever portfolio or assignment of clients you're to deal with. That was your responsibility. You were supposed to make that better, and it was all on your plate. And so it made every single person accountable to whatever work you were, given, and then made to show, okay, what are you going to do to make this situation better? It's on you. This is your plate. You're to make this better. And I love that he had everyone in the department be their own leader of their own work.
Well, and they felt good about themselves too, right?
Yeah.
They felt like they had a place. Everybody has a role. I know what my role is, and it's going to be different roles. I mean, there's no doubt about it, but I feel good about the role I play. And if I didn't feel good about it, I think from the sounds of the way you describe him, I could easily walk in, close the door and say, hey, you have a minute? Can I talk to you about the role I have? And, I thought maybe I could be doing this or I could do more over here. And I think he'd probably sit with you and say, well, Christina, great points. And I think you can get there someday. Here are some of the things you can work on. But what happens is because of his openness and his ability to challenge you to be the best person you could in a positive way, he begins dialogue of he's also doing career development discussions in such a great informal way that you look back now and you think, wow, he was a great leader. He gave me good opportunities to grow and develop, but he also was training and developing me without me even knowing it.
Yeah, I have to say he was probably my best mentor in business, bar none in all the years I've been in business. And it's interesting. Everyone felt this great joy to be there and do their best because they had this top leadership that believed in them to do their best. And you're right. I actually went to him after there being a number of years at the company and said, hey, I want to move up to leadership and management one day. And he had a brief talk with me about what wasn't good about my work or my presence and what I could work on. And it was a hard discussion to hear, but he was so, what's the word, Rocky? It was done with such respect. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think so. So I think when people talk about, what's a word that you would like someone to describe you as a leader, and people come up with words like, definitive, or enthusiastic, aggressive, or whatever. I mean, they all think of these great adjectives to describe them someday as a leader. I think the best word to describe a leader is thoughtful. You're a thoughtful person. It sounds like he was a thoughtful person. He wanted to make sure that you understood what you needed to work on. He wanted to make sure that you understood, the things you needed to do to make yourself a better person and a better leader. But he also wanted to do it in such a way that it didn't break you down. It built you up. Yes. So you walked out of there. You may have been disappointed, but you weren't defeated. That's the difference. Mm-hmm. You had the good D. You were disappointed. It's okay to be disappointed, but you weren't defeated. That's a bad D. So you said, okay, I got this. All right. Maybe it wasn't what I wanted to hear, or maybe even wasn't what I expected to hear. But you know what? I believe what he's telling me because I believe he cares enough in me to tell me those kinds of things. And so to me, that's what I think great leaders are. They're thoughtful. A great leader is a thoughtful person. It's not decisive. It's not, I can make decisions quickly and effectively. Okay, that's great. But what if you make the wrong decisions? You got to be a thoughtful leader.
Yeah. Yeah. And Rocky, on that point, what was amazing is that I walked out feeling energized and disappointed. You're right. But I felt energized, and my toolbox was filled of goods. Now I could work on these tools and use what he's given me and go out there and explode. And that's what I did. In less than a year, I was a manager. But I took what he gave me, the advice and what I need to work on, and I just walked out there and made it happen with his belief behind me. So you're right. That's what a great leader does. He didn't break me down. He built me up and gave me the tools in my toolbox that now I could go out there and do it.
That's fantastic. And you know what? As a leader yourself, someday you aspire and you hope that someday there's someone someplace talking about you in the same terms, and you don't do it, you don't purposely do it that way, but you hope that as you start to grow and develop and you take on different responsibilities, that's what you hope when people think about you or me or other leaders. What they really think about is would I work for that person again? Are they the type of person that, they were thoughtful in the way they presented things to me? They cared enough about me to tell me things I may not want to hear. Look, we all have to hear and deliver bad news at different times. I mean, that's how companies and people get themselves in trouble. They weren't open enough for people to deliver them bad news, right? So they're being told, all quiet on the Russian front. Everything's fine over here. Well, meanwhile, the place is on fire. Well, it's because you don't accept bad news. Well, you have to be the type of leader. You set the tone from the top. Do you set the tone that I need you to come in and talk to me, and vice versa? I'm the type of leader when you walked into him that day, he did it in such a polite, professional, thoughtful way that you walked out putting together your game plan of, well, you know what, then let's go. We're going to fix this and we're going to get there. And so that was great.
Yeah, absolutely. What have you seen working with businesses and around businesses all these years? Have you found as deficiencies in leadership?
Well, in the small businesses, what I find is I talked about before, their strength becomes their weakness. And one of the things I think is sometimes the problem is that, there's still a strategy piece. So as small businesses are growing and you go from the single or, 2-person type of business to the 4 and 6, you really have to start to learn, okay, the day-to-day, while it's so important and I got to make sure when I hit the cash register, there's money in there for my people, my vendors and my family. But at some point, you have to start to transition yourself, to where you're starting to have a little bit more vision. Well, what's this business going to look like in the next 6 months, 18 months, 3 years from now? And so sometimes that transition is difficult because I'm comfortable in the tactical day-to-day and I'm good at it. I'll give you a quick example is, you have a business that's really starting to grow and you're getting into that peak season kind of point of the year. And now all of a sudden, you haven't found a way to feel good about or confident enough to allow some more key people to use the cash register or collect cash for you or handle a transaction. So all of a sudden, everybody on the floor, everybody in your store is taking care of the customers, but the line's out the door to pay for it. because the bottleneck is you're the only person allowed to use a cash register. So while the customer may have had a good experience in purchasing the goods and services, now all of a sudden they're waiting on a 10-person line because you're the only one that can handle the cash register. So you really have to start to, part of the growth is you have, like we talked about. So in the growth, you had enough people on the floor to handle the customers, but you didn't have enough people to handle the cash register. So that's the confidence that you have to have in your people to delegate to them and give them the confidence to say, hey, look, I'm going to entrust you with, the money side of the business. And then you got to hope that that's when you start to talk to them like, hey, act like an owner. This is your business. I want you to think like this is your business. So I think that those are some of the things on the small business side. I think on the larger corporations or big company sides, I think one of the things that leaders get themselves in trouble with sometimes is they start to think it's about them. And it's not about you as a leader. It's about your people. I'll give you a good example of that real quick, Christina. How many meetings have you been at, or you've been sitting at a meeting and you hear the person in charge say, you don't know what it's like to be me. I'm under a lot of pressure. And you're like, okay, that's great, but you wanted this job. So, yeah. I mean, right. You don't know what it's like here. I have to go answer for this, this, and this. And it's like, okay, but you are the manager. I mean, you raised your hand and said, put me in coach. Let me be the manager, So I think that sometimes leaders start to make it internal, and it's never about you as the leader. It's about your people. It's about the things you're doing to help them understand what roles they play and what are the things we're trying to accomplish together as a team. But once you internalize it as that it's about you, you really start to lose your people.
Wow. I love that you went there. One of the things I get when I go talk to staff at companies and get the feedback first from the officers and the managers, supervisors and such, they sometimes have a totally different perspective of what's really going down in the company than the support staff, who have a totally different perspective. And they're both sometimes on totally different pages. And often what I get from the support staff is I'm not valued. They don't care about me. They're just using me. And while they are getting a paycheck for their services, they want to be valued as their skills and as people. And so I have to bring that back to management and say, hey, guys, you got to work with your people here. They're not separate from you. If you're feeling overworked, then what can we do to get people using their skills and talent to the utmost so that you're not having to stay here till 11 o'clock or midnight every night and work weekends? It shouldn't be that way. I mean, you have a staff. You should be all sharing in whatever it takes to make this work. It shouldn't just be you.
Oh, I agree. And think about it. I mean, how many times when you're in an organization or you're talking to people, the disconnect is so wide. I mean, there are times somebody's walking into your office, I would say to people all the time, you're having this conversation with an individual. What do you think their expectations of this conversation are? What do you mean? Well, you're bringing them in to have a serious conversation about their performance. I hope they're not walking in here thinking you're going to give them a quality letter when you really want to give them a warning letter. No, that never happens. Well, sure enough, that's happened more times than you want to believe, where somebody's walking in thinking they're going to get on a pat on the back and someone's saying to them, hey, I'm not sure you're going to be able to work here much longer. So how do you get that kind of disconnect? Yeah. Well, it's the communication. It's the way you talk to people. Does everybody understand what role they play or what they're, what are you being held accountable for? What are the things, you know what that's like? I mean, there's people who have no metrics or measures, coming to work every day and being a positive person is what they think is good. Okay, that's good, but that's not what we're holding you accountable for. But no one's ever told them that. So I think that communication of what's expected of you, what role you play. And then I think what happens is people you get out there and talk to your people. I always say to people all the time, I could never be the undercover boss. Not that I don't like the show or I'm not saying anything bad about the show, but it would break my heart to be the undercover boss. I mean, nobody knows who we are. I want to be Cheers. Everybody knows your name. Get out there. Get out there and walk around. Get people to know you,
Yeah. And actually that makes me cringe when I see that show and there's this big CEO who is disconnected from their people. On one hand, it's nice that they're getting down and deep, but sometimes it feels a bit fake and it's like they're playing a game with their employees, like, oh, I'm going to sit in the truck and deliver garbage with you, but meanwhile I get to go home to my cushy office later on, give you a nice prize, and look at me, aren't I wonderful? It just feels kind of icky to me, instead of being like the true leader that I talked about before, where what's going on, whether you're in the trenches or not. You're helping people live their best possible selves and whatever work they're doing, and not holding yourself way above them as if you're a god.
Well, I think, if you think about it, while look, it's a nice show and it's fun to watch and everything, but to me, you just sit back sometimes and you think to yourself, boy, I'd hate to find out that people are struggling or suffering or not feeling good about the fact that they work for our company. Look, I know there's levels, and I've managed some very large, complicated things in my career. And at one of my responsibilities, there was 78,000 employees in my region. So, do I think every single person knew who I was? No, but you get out there enough that people believe you're approachable. See, that's the difference. What you want people to believe is that, well, wait a second. If Rocky knew this, or if Joe Scafone knew this, he would be upset. Well, that's what you want people to believe. Yeah, they realize that there's no way that you know everything, but you'd want them to believe that, hey, if Joe knew this, he'd be upset.
Yeah, and that you're approachable enough that they can bring it to you. Because what I find far too often is I'll talk to support staff, and there's major critical things going on, in the company, in the trenches, that upper management has no clue, and that could really sink the ship. There's holes. And water's getting in, and upper management has no clue, and they're not comfortable enough sharing it with them. I'm like, that is a big problem.
Well, yeah, and you think about all these companies that, look, they're in the news all the time that have had such terrible, issues, and every time you turn TV on now, we're watching Wells Fargo's commercials about, we started then, now we restarted again now, and well, that's all wonderful, but there's no, you got to think to yourself, somewhere along the line, somebody said, hey, something's not right here. But the question was, were you open enough to hear that? So I think that's really the question is do you set the tone from the top as the leader that, while we all want to hear good news, we know that it's not possible for every day. And that's why I think values are such an important part of leadership. Values do matter. And, you have to walk the talk. People have to see you, and they have to recognize the fact that you care about doing the right things, even sometimes when the right things are tough, right? I mean, you want to see good numbers, you want to produce good results, but unfortunately, the numbers just aren't there. And so you have to be able to take your lumps and say, look, we had a rough quarter, we had a rough month, but you know what? Here's what we're going to do to get better, but not always round up on every single item that you have when you should be rounded down.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. Well, this has been such a fascinating talk, and I don't want anyone to leave here without finding out how they can get your great new book, Tighten the Lug Nuts. And how can they find out more about you?
Well, thank you very much. So the book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble online. It's been great. We're a 5-star. I'm all excited. I just saw that we're a 5-star Amazon book, so that's pretty cool. And the book is, thank you. And also on our website is www. It's the number 3 and the word 60, SIXTY, managementservices.com. It's a very interactive site. We've really tried hard to make it interactive. I do get feedback from people. They'll send me emails. My email is Rocky, ROCKY, Romanella, ROMANELLA @gmail.com. I get emails all the time from people, either a thought, a suggestion, hey, this happened, what do you think? Or so I like that very much, to be able to interact with your guests and the different people that I've met along the way. We do keynote speaking, some consulting work you'll see on our website. We do a lot of leadership training. The thing that's just recent, Christina, which has been a lot of fun, companies have been doing what I call them lunch and learns or book clubs, where they'll buy the books.
I love that.
They'll buy the book for their people, and I dial in, or I'll visit with them depending if they want me to visit, or if it's just a dial in, and we'll spend an hour and a half talking about a specific chapter in the book or a specific topic in the book. So I think that's been a lot of fun for me. I really enjoy that. So I'm very open to doing that and really enjoy doing that as well. So that's been a lot of fun. And of course, we're on all the social media, Twitter, we're 360 Management Services, Facebook. And so that's always a lot of fun as well. But I think ultimately, for me, the book has been the opportunity to, kind of maybe leave a little bit of a legacy. I think when people read the book, there's some great stories in the book. You'll laugh. I'm hoping you'll laugh in every chapter. There's a story in every chapter. So, and you'll get to find out how I got the title, Tighten the Lug Nuts. So that's one of the chapters. So I won't give that away, but that's a lot of fun as well. But the book allowed me to do two things. And one was to recognize my dad, who was such an important part of my life growing up and really instilled in me the values and ethics and the importance of being a good person, first and foremost. And then my wife, Debbie, who's been such a wonderful partner, friend, mentor in my adult life. And I don't think there's many of the principles of leadership that I use today really came from her, in conversations with her and watching how she conducts herself, handles herself. I mean, we moved 9 times just to watch her and see how she took care of, handled the family and handled the different challenges we had along the moves was just inspiring. And I think that she's just been a great partner, a great friend. And so it gave me a chance. So she spends a lot of time in the book with me and my dad in the early parts of the book. So you'll get a chance to meet Debbie Romanella as well in the book, along with Joe Scafone and my dad, Pasquale.
Well, that's so awesome that you have a great team there, that your wife is also a great partner and your dad. And it's great to have been great business mentors that serve and that you could look to as a role model. And it looks like you have that. Now, just to remind everyone that 360managementservices.com, it's a number 3, then spelled out 60managementservices.com. You have your wonderful blog there too that people can read and continually brush up on business and leadership. And again, I just have to thank you for sharing your great wisdom today on Savvy Business Radio.
Well, I got to tell you, Christina, you were an awesome host. And I tell you what, for me as a guest, you really helped me out a lot. So I really appreciate your professionalism. So thank you very much. And hopefully if your audience has any questions, they could reach me, or if they reach you, you can absolutely send them over to me and I'll answer them to the best of my ability.
You betcha. Thank you so much.
Savvy Business Radio broadcasts worldwide via a large podcast network, celebrating business owners, entrepreneurs, influencers, and successful individuals. Find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest. Call 732-474-7375 or email Christina@savvybusinessradio.com.